Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to another author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia. Many of you know me as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And joining us today is an author making their official debut here on the channel. Now, my guest today is a new author residing in Central Florida, although she wouldn't turn down the lifestyle of a swamp witch with unlimited Wi-Fi and chocolate. She relishes being an unapologetic geek, loving the fantasy, horror, and sci-fi genres. It was always her dream to write a book, and hopefully with time and playing a pizza, she can continue crafting stories for many years to come. Well, viewers and listeners, we're going to be talking about my guest's book, as well as get a little teaser for the next book in their series. So without further ado, let's give a huge round of applause to today's guest, author Michelle Matteson. Michelle, welcome to the
Hello.
Wandering Scribe.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
No problem, Michelle, no problem. So before we dive into your background as an author, as well as your book, is there a little known fact about you that many people may not know about?
Um, I am a monster lover. I do like monster lover romances. I enjoy. I grew up in the era of gargoyles, so
Yes.
Goliath and Elisa will always be the OTP. Yeah, that's sometimes an element of my work. I like exploring what it means to be human. I like exploring the idea of what we like in another person and finding that person and holding on to them.
Nice. Very, very nice. And speaking of your work, do you have a copy of your series that you can showcase the
I
viewers
do.
and listeners?
All right. This is Those That Glow Gold, my first book.
Mm.
Uh, it was written and published in 2020. As many people, I was forced to stay home for the majority of that year, and I started coming up with the idea and the plot, and decided I was going to go all in and publish it and bring it out to the world by myself.
Very nice, Michelle. So you and I would be considered what the internet has now referred to our generation of authors as the COVID authors, the lockdown authors.
Yeah, sitting at home, having nothing to do but watch TV or rot in bed. And I was like, if I'm ever going to write a book, now is the time.
Yes, absolutely 100%. So before we dive into your series, Michelle, let's talk a little bit more about you and the lead up to that. So growing up, as you mentioned before, you grew up with like the era of the Gargoyles, which is one of my favorite classic Disney shows, which I absolutely love, and the storytelling. What really inspired you to pursue writing? Were you always writing growing up? Did you write as like a hobby? And what
Um,
would you consider your aha moment definitively?
I I kind of played with the idea of writing growing up. I do have dyslexia, so writing for me was difficult.
Mm,
But I had ideas. I wrote down ideas. I really kind of got my feet wet in writing fan fiction,
okay.
which I know a lot of people look down on that, but it really is a great way to learn how to write with a world that has already been developed. You don't
Right.
have to worry about characters, you don't have to worry about character backgrounds, um, locations, if it has magic, how the magic works. And so uh prior to COVID, I had the idea for Those That Glow Gold and started daydreaming about it, thinking about it. And once COVID started, it would just was like, yeah, I now have the time to sit down and write it. And I did. And very proud of what I came up with and hope to continue.
Nice. Very, very nice. So now let's dive into the creation of the book and the series itself, the behind the scenes. So, what really sparked the idea for your series of books, beginning with the first one?
It's basically your standard somebody getting thrown into a magical society. It's not original or new in that aspect. Um it was kind of a it was kind of a spite because I did grow up with Harry Potter and I did enjoy Harry Potter, but unfortunately with She Who Must Not Be Named, it's kind of gotten harder and harder to enjoy that world. And so it was like, well, let me see if I can hopefully do something that's better and start to develop something that hopefully is more inclusive. Um, Try to make it original, try to put my own stamp on that idea of a magical world that exists along our own.
Nice. Now, from that point, when you were crafting the outline, would you consider yourself a very detailed outliner from like beginning to end, or you
Oh,
consider yourself a pantser?
no, I am definitely 100% a pantser. Generally, I have the major notes of the story or the major this happens and then this happens, but the middle of the portion definitely is by the seat of my pants. I actually am very fearful of people who can sit there and go, "Yeah, I am going to write this 50,000 word story," because I'll be like, "Yeah, I think this will be 50,000 words," and then 100,000 words later, I'm like, "It wasn't 50,000 words, guys." So I no shade on people who can do that, but I'm definitely not one of them.
Absolutely, very, very true. And kind of in the same line, once you began writing the rough draft in the shell, did you have like a ritual or routine that kept you grounded and center, or did you, or let me phrase it, or are you a type of author who, if there's a time and day to write, you would write?
When I started, I would always try to dictate at least an hour a day of writing. And it was kind of hard to like it's a lot of people are very lucky that they can do like they have their own office or they can go to a cafe and stuff like that. I was writing on my couch with my son next to me during COVID, watching a Disney movie for the 10th time that day, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit busier, so it's generally 2 to 3 times a week, and still trying to carve out that hour of writing and making sure I keep it consistent instead of trying to sprint for 1 month or 1 week a month or something like that.
Mm, all right. Okay. And from that point, once you had the rough outline of the story and then crafting the story in of itself, ultimately, as you mentioned before, you wanted to create your own inclusive, magical world. With that in mind, what were your other goals that you had for the series, not just for yourself as the author, but also the promise to your future readers?
Um, I hope to make sure that I finish the series. I do have a bad habit of starting something and not finishing it.
Mm.
Um, right now, with the way that the story is going, I think it's going to be about 4 books. Still working on the third one, unfortunately, but um, I don't know. I It may take me a while. It may take me a decade, but I do promise to finish this one day. And I've made that promise to myself, and I make that promise to anybody who decides to join me along the journey.
Nice, very nice. And as our first fan question of the episode, one of my viewers asked, when you began this journey of being an author, what really surprised you about writing your very first book?
Um, I find it surprising just how what's the word I'm thinking and looking for? I find it surprising that a lot of people look down on independent publishing.
Mm,
Um, there seems to be the stigmata of, oh, indie authors aren't as good as traditional authors, and I think that's really, you're gonna, if you go into that mindset, I think you're really gonna turn yourself off to a lot of great authors out there.
mm,
Because I've also seen in the last few years, there's a lot of indie authors who get picked up by traditional publishing, and that's great and that's wonderful, and then they become mainstream, but obviously they wouldn't be where they are unless they were good and they supported themselves and believed in themselves when other people didn't.
right.
It's not like they became instantly better once they got picked up by traditional publishing.
Mm,
It's that they were good all along. And if you sit there and go, oh, I won't read an indie author because it's not good as traditional publishing, I think you're going to really shoot yourself in the foot and and lose the ability to read all that, because a lot of the things that people complain about indie authors, I see happening in traditional publishing. Like,
right.
I'll be reading a book that probably saw 15 editors and they still spelt a word wrong. And I'm like, well, I did it. But it still happens in the traditional publishing. So I think it's, always have an open mind. There you might find that niche author that writes what to you is the perfect book. So yeah, going into it and starting to write for myself, just seeing how some people are like, oh, you write, do you write for a company? I'm like, nope, I do it myself. And they're like, oh, like the
Right.
instant, like, yeah,
The
the
hesitation
ick.
and the yeah.
Yeah. Because beforehand I was like, oh yeah, I've heard people self-publish all the time, and then it was like the not the hate, but the instant, like, ugh, like
Mm,
it surprised me, it for sure.
absolutely. Very, very true. And we'll probably be touching on that when we get to the business side of being an indie author, because there's a lot of comments and questions for
Mhm.
that one piece. But going forward from that, so now let's dive more into the book itself, the characters, world building, and the lore itself. And another fan question, one of my viewers asked, when crafting your book and your series, how did you write the characters so that way they would be authentic to the world that you've written them in and yet complex?
Um, I think it's very important to uh not have perfect characters. They have to have flaws. Obviously the way they approach situations are going to heavily influence how the plot goes. I've actually had situations where I've tried writing a scene and had so much difficulty, and when I sat about it and thought about it, it's like, yeah, that character was acting weird because they don't act that way in that situation. And I think it's the voice in my head saying, no, they would not act this way.
Right.
Um, so I think it's very important to um sit with weird question. And it can't be like, what's their favorite color? It could be things like, um how many siblings did they have, and did they lose a sibling when they were younger, and did they lose this family member? And it's all lore that you have to build up in your head, even if it doesn't make it to the page, because that's the way you sit with them and learn about them. And then when you sit with them and learn about them, the rest of the story just falls into place.
Very true. 100%. Very, very true. Now, going to the world building, how did you ensure that your world building and the world that these characters reside in drew inspiration from other stories? Because as authors, we're always going to be inspired by other works, but it wasn't very clear as to which universe or which series of books you were drawing your inspiration from.
um my main inspiration, at least what I was consciously thinking of when I was first writing the book. Um, Growing up, there was a movie called Flight of the Dragons that I
Hmm.
absolutely loved as a kid. And in that book, a man gets transported to a magical world. Standard, like I said, it's not a new idea. It's happened over and over and over again. But he approaches it with a very scientific viewpoint. And it's very interesting because, of course, everybody who's trying to teach him about the magic is like, yeah, it's this way because it's magic. And he's like, no, there's gotta be a reason. And
Right.
it's like things like dragons fly because they have hydrogen, and then that helps them to have fire breath. And it's like having that system or that basis of science doesn't take away from the magic. So so in my world, it's like magic is a force, a power, and it helps you do these awesome and amazing things. But it's still like, yes, it's phasing because you're pushing molecules past each other, and you use
Hmm.
magic to do so. And once you kind of go like, oh yeah, this magic can be possible if you think of it in terms of working with magic, working with science, and not working against it.
Yes, absolutely. 100% Ridgewood. I don't think I've ever heard of um that name before. So thank you for sharing that because I have to
Yeah.
go and check it out because I'm always looking into either new books, new media, or new inspiration from all of my guests on the show. Now, another fan question, which is probably one of my favorites to ask authors, is in the first book, Michelle, who or what is your favorite character or scene that you've written? And secondly, who or what was the most difficult scene or character to write?
Um, in my book, the book takes place from a character named Krista's point of view,
Mm,
and she is the one who is thrust into this magical world and finding out that magic exists and she's a part of it and she can do magic. But it's really Tommy who is my favorite character, and he my poor child. I torture him so, but I love him to death because he's sarcastic and he's rude, but at the same time he's a very complex character, and he's in in the end he's a good character and he's a good guy, and I love him to death and I love writing for him. Um the most difficult stuff would probably be naming people.
mm,
Even that side character,
yes,
um
I know the
even
struggle.
that side character that's going to only be on the page for maybe like 2 or 3 paragraphs. I actually have a character that I named Smith, and then he became a bigger character in the next book, and I was like, oh, I wish I hadn't called him Smith. Because it was like, no, wait, that's way too basic for him. But naming people has always been my biggest hurdle, and coming up with names and making sure that I don't spend hours researching names and baby names and all that good stuff.
Same, absolutely same. That's why I use a name generator to
Yeah.
just help with that. It makes things so much easier. Granted, I'm sure you'll definitely agree. I have to go back and sometimes, okay, I mentioned this character. Okay, what was his name in the character list?
Oh no, he makes a bigger part. I should have not called him Bob.
Yes,
Like Bob
100%.
may not have been the best name for him, but it's yeah, naming people is definitely my biggest hurdle.
Very true. Very, very true. Now, as you mentioned earlier, you began writing this during the lockdown, during COVID.
Mm.
Now, I'm curious, at what point did you feel comfortable in letting people know, whether friends or family, that you were embarking on this new journey? And looking at your journey thus far, what have been the reviews and feedback been like from your beta readers and just fans in general?
Um well, I was such a baby author at the time. I actually did not have beta readers. I did not have beta readers. I did not have ARC readers. I actually was very shocked that I was kind of celebrating publishing the book, and I reached out to an author at the time, and I was like, I wrote a book, because she was in the process of writing a book as well, and she's like, cool, awesome, what is it called? And I said, and I mentioned Those That Glow Gold, and next thing I know, she's ordering a copy, and it's like, oh no, somebody that I respect as an author is going to read my book. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my goodness. um but she loved it, and she promoted it for a little bit, and that was wonderful. And um I don't know, it was published, and I didn't expect it to like blow up overnight, and I 5 years later, it's still, I think I've had like a total of 100 sales, but every sale is just like, oh wow, somebody is giving it a shot.
Yeah.
Somebody is giving it a chance. And knowing that is a great warm fuzzy feeling. And then when they reach out and go, oh, I love this, and I love this, and I love this character, or I love this scene, it's just like, wow. And that is a great feeling, because I know my book might not be for everybody,
Right.
but then people that I know that like it, it's like, I'm glad. I'm glad. I love you. I would kiss you if you were here in front of me. So yeah, it's yeah, I've done small things to try to promote it, book tours and whatnot. But I 5 years later, and having maybe 100 sales, but every sale is like, great, wonderful. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you love it as much as I loved writing it.
Very true. That's great to hear, Michelle. That is amazing. Now we get to probably one of the most important questions which every author has encountered in our careers, and that is, of course, the dreaded imposter syndrome and writer's block. So for you, Michelle, how do you deal with those two?
Um, well, imposter syndrome, again, being a baby author, I know that I don't have the name recognition. I know that it will probably always take time, and I may never get there, and that's okay with me. This is going to be a passion project from start to finish, and like I said, I have made the promise to myself that
Mm.
I will finish at some point. Um, I don't really uh I write. I write well. I can say that. And I feel like I'm constantly growing, and I think that's the ultimate goal as a writer, is to always make sure you're doing better than you did before.
Absolutely.
Um so as for writer's block, generally the best thing that has worked for me is if I find myself not wanting to work on the thing I need to work on, usually a side project helps, and short stories and exploring different other genres. And even if it's a silly little scene that has popped into my head, I maybe I'll be able to develop that in the future and turn it into something more. And finding the passion for writing just helps me get back into what I should be writing.
Nice. That's amazing, Michelle. That is amazing. Now we're going to go into what I like to call some reflective questions. So this first one is a pretty big one, so I'll give some context to this. And that is, what does it mean to be an author in the digital age? Because the industry has changed within the last 20 years or so. Before, I want to say, before even the 21st century, independent authors or indie authors of the late 90s and early 2000s were kind of seen as, lesser form of publication, that everyone wanted to go to traditional publishing, go to the big ones like HarperCollins, Simon Schuster, Penguin Random House, Tor, Forge, and so forth. And those still exist. Those still are the primary publication houses, if not more, in the States. But over the last 20 years, the indie author rise has just skyrocketed that you can't even tell the difference between a traditionally published book and an indie author book because of the quality and just the writing in of itself. And for indie authors, it's been a boon to us because we're able to connect and reach out to so many people via social media, grow our brand, and just showcase our books. On the other side, with social media, unfortunately, we do leave ourselves exposed to a lot of negativity, hate speech, trolls, and so forth, which again, social media is a very, very draining tool. It's a very draining and negative inducing platform, depending, not always, but it does happen. And it could just throw us into a funk. So ultimately, Michelle, the question I pose to you is what has disciplined you to still be the author you want to be looking back on your success thus far?
Um, I think just reminding myself that my book is not for everybody, and that's okay. Um, Sometimes I see, and of course they say don't read the reviews, but we all read the reviews.
Yes,
um, but like seeing somebody who leaves a 1-star review on a book, and the first thing they say is, "I don't like fantasy." Then why are you reading a fantasy book? Why are you
exactly.
reading a fantasy book? Why are you giving a fantasy book 1 star? Um, you can't please everybody. You can't make everybody happy. Your book is not going to be for everyone. And even the ones, the bestsellers, the ones that do great, the ones that get turned into movies, they're not going to appeal to everybody. And that's
Nope.
okay. It's okay to be different. It's okay to stand out. It's okay to be um a little weirdo and cringe, and you will, at some point your book will become somebody's favorite book, and it will, yes, you will probably have that person who writes the 1-star review where they're like, well, I don't like fantasy. I don't know what to tell you, dude. Why did you waste your time on it? Thank you for buying it, but why did you waste your time on it? I think, and that's the thing about social media, is that, yeah, you can say your opinion online and you can probably find your little group of people who agree with you,
Mhm.
but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have an opinion on everything.
Yes.
um uh, you don't have to have, just because everybody's watching a certain show or reading a certain book, you don't have to read it, you don't have to watch it. And if you do and you don't like it, well, that's on you, my friend. So yeah, I've just always tried to keep in mind, and for the most part, I've gotten mostly positive interactions. So far, I haven't had anybody try to slide into my DMs to tell me I'm trash or anything like that. And if they do, I know I just have to um, keep the knowledge in it. It reflects more on them than it reflects on me.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And here's
And
another.
oh, sorry. I was gonna say, and the day I get that 1-star review where it says I hated this book because it was fantasy, I'm gonna get that printed on a mug and it's gonna become my favorite mug.
Then you can market it too. You
Yeah,
use it for
exactly.
marketing.
Yeah.
So the next question that I did want to ask you, Michelle, is one that I've been asking a lot of authors this past year in of itself. And it is this notion of whether or not we are in a golden age or an iron age of indie authors. Now, context for this question, I've been doing this show for about 6 years now. I've interviewed about almost close to 200 authors, which is absolutely insane. And a majority of the authors that I've had featured on the show, all of them began around the same time as we did back in the year 2020, if not 2021. We were part of the COVID author generation. And when the floodgates opened to us, once things started getting better, we took the publishing world by storm. Soon the market was flooded and, some would argue, oversaturated with new voices and material. And while that is good that there are new voices in the industry, we do have to think, okay, are these authors who are passionate about growing in the industry, or are they just writing just to make a quick buck? Because I'm sure you would agree, being an author and getting into this business and industry is not a get rich quick scheme. It is not a moneymaker. Will we all like it to be?
It's definitely the
Absolutely.
long haul. Yeah, it's definitely the
Mhm.
long haul.
Very true. Very true. So, with that said, looking at from your own experiences from either book sales or just seeing other indie authors on the rise through social media or probably talking with others in your inner circle, do you believe that we are in a golden age of authors or an iron slash actually an iron age of authors?
Um, I feel like it's definitely it's kind of two sides of the same coin. It on the one hand, self-publishing means that you're in control. You have the ability to market any way that you want. You have the ability to find an editor that you gel with. You have the
Yes.
ability to find an artist that you gel with. Um, but at the other end of the coin, it's, oh my God, I have to find an editor that I gel with. Oh my God, I have to find an artist that I gel with. Oh my God, I have to figure out what the best ad is. I have to figure out what sales I should run. Um, and it's if you're like me and you don't know what you're doing, you might flounder a bit. Like I didn't have an editor at first, and then I kept seeing the same things about, hey, you need to have an editor, and I'm like, okay, all right, that lesson learned. Let me get an editor, and then it was my job to find that person. The only thing that I worry about is with the rise of AI is
Yes.
having, unfortunately, because a lot of people did start writing, a lot of other people are like, well, if they can do it, I can put the prompt into AI and AI will create this for me. And so I think it's going to be very important to make sure you're supporting the people who are doing it on their own and have the human voices. And uh, because I think we will get inundated with AI stories that don't make sense or are just cookie cutter, just because they think that's what the market wants. And I
Mm,
think it's going to become very important to make sure you write for yourself and write the stuff that you are passionate about and keep it so that it's not all the same, you know,
mhm.
over and over and over again.
Absolutely. Very, very true, Michelle. And that kind of goes now into the next segment of the interview, the business side of being an author. And as an icebreaker question, looking back on your journey thus far, in terms of marketing and promoting your book and series, is there anything you would have done differently?
I think I would have gotten that editor right away. Um, I think I would have tried to get an artist, because unfortunately I've lost contact with the artist that did the cover for my first two books. So unfortunately it looks like I might have to either a find somebody who can redo the first two or emulate the style of the first two. Because like I've heard so many authors talking about getting pre-mades or buying the rights to photos that they plan on using in 10 years.
Mm,
And sitting there, I was like, that sounds like you're being a little too paranoid or you're being a little too cautious. And then I lost contact with my artist and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, now I see. And but it's a bit of a it's a bit of a learning curve, and
mhm.
it's good to have a group of other authors who have gone through this similar thing, and you can talk to each other. And and it's also important to make sure you don't gatekeep either.
Yes.
um because you're going to meet baby authors, and as long as they are open to listening to some advice, just say, hey, this is what worked for me, this didn't work for me, but this does, and hopefully send them on the way to come up behind you and do their own thing.
Absolutely. Very, very true, Michelle. And this kind of goes next into, I like to call authors, writers groups, and so forth. Now, you and I actually met through a group on Discord, one that's run by a mutual friend of everyone on that server, Raven White, who I've had featured on the channel, I want to say, in the early years of the Wandering Scribe. So, how did you get involved with Curious Corvid? And for you as an author, what does it mean to be a part of a very inclusive and open community of indie authors, poets, and so forth?
Well, I found Curious COVID on Instagram.
Mm.
And I've read several of the stories that are currently being published through the company, and I love the fact that, again, everybody seems to have their niche, but it works for them. They're not making stuff that you have seen 100 times before. It's all new and it's all fresh. I have had the unfortunate luck to be part of writer groups where you have a very loud minority who tell you you have to do it this way.
Right.
And unfortunately, sometimes I think that that's very privileged way of looking at it.
Mm.
You must have a following before you must have a newsletter, you must have a following before you do this, you must give away your books for free, you must do this, you must do that, you must do this, you must do that. And again, it shouldn't be this is what you should do. It should be this is what worked for me.
Mm.
And and sometimes you have to take that advice and tailor it to your own situation. But yeah, it's very funny when you're part of a group where you have that very small minority, but the very vocal minority who are like, you have to do it this way. And if you say, no, that doesn't work for me, they're like, their minds are blown. They can't see any other point of view than their own. And I think it's important to be a part of a group of people where one person is doing it this way, one person's doing it this way, one person's doing this way, one person did it this way and it didn't work for them, but you know what, now they're doing it this way and that works for you. And it's very important to find that supportive group of people who are still willing to give advice, but also understand that I might not follow your advice.
Absolutely. That is 100% very, very true. And I've also been very fortunate enough to be a part of other writers groups. I mean, Curious Corvid, meeting Raven, and just that interaction has been so incredible. And I've learned a lot from her about how to run my own my own server, and just gathering a good group of people, like-minded people from different writing backgrounds and so forth, and just bouncing off ideas off of them, getting their feedback. And you're right, trusting them that they're going to be okay if I don't take their feedback, and so forth. And it's just really, really cool to be a part of a community that genuinely wants to help all the members and see them grow and be successful. Because as indie authors, it's all on us. We're not marketers, we're not business people, we are authors. And sometimes we need an extra help. And the one thing I found very helpful from these writers groups is learning about our audience and who exactly we write for. Because for us authors, viewers, and listeners, we write for ourselves. But when we publish our books, we have to take into account, okay, who exactly are we writing for? Do we know the genre definitively that this falls under? And so forth. Because people definitely have expectations of how a book is supposed to be written if it's in one genre or so forth. So for you, Michelle, for your book and series, do you have a good idea of your audience, and how do you balance the authenticity of showcasing your voice, but also understanding the genre that you write in?
Um, I feel like anybody who enjoys fantasy but may not always feel I love fantasy, but when it comes to the very horror lore heavy Lord of the Rings,
Yes.
like beautiful, gorgeous, obviously a, a masterpiece, obviously ushered in a new age of fantasy for us, but I don't want to spend 5 pages talking about somebody's family tree if those characters are not going to walk on into the page and actually do something for the story. um it is important to have that lore in the background, but at the same time it's like I don't need to know and the entire history of a world and spend 10 chapters dissecting that.
Mm,
So some people might call it shallow, but I kind of feel like if you like fantasy but you don't want to have to spend um a great amount of time putting a lot of brain power into it, you'll probably enjoy my book.
right.
I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to set it in a modern setting and have it where there's this separate magical society, because I still wanted to have our world and what's happening here and now, and people with cell phones and people talking about the internet, but at the same time if you have somebody who has a talking animal on their shoulder,
Right.
like there's still the whimsy, and but they're at the same time it's not going to be like you have to spend a large amount of time and brain power remembering somebody's grandfather's name and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Very, very true, Michelle. Could not agree more. And now I'm going to throw in some rapid fire fan questions. So be prepared. So
Okay.
here's the first rapid fire fan question. Which is better, in your opinion, writing an emotional scene or writing a conflict scene?
uh Emotional scenes. I feel like those are really good to make sure that you know what's going on in a character's head.
All righty. Next one. Out of the five senses, which is the most difficult to present in storytelling?
I would vote for taste.
Ooh, okay.
Only because I can describe somebody eating a steak, but actually describing what it tastes like would be a whole nother thing.
All righty. Next one. Most overused trope in fiction.
Oh wow. Um I guess I'm not like other girls. It's okay to have a character who uh goes to the beat of their own drum, but I kind of feel like sometimes authors will try to drive that into your head, and it's just in a case like that, just that have them be themselves and you don't have to make them compete with other people.
Nice. And this one kind of may be the same. Least favorite trope.
um I don't like the huh. You might have stumped me there. um I guess lore dumps, like I said, having very thick lore dumps. It's very hard because you do need to make sure you develop that lore as an author, that you yourself understand it.
Right.
Um, but then having somebody try to commit it to the page itself, it can be very hard to balance, making sure you have the information that they need for the story, and the information, and I don't need to know his great grandfather, his great great grandmother, so on and so forth.
All right. Nice. Next one. Ooh, okay. This person really likes to go for 3 for 3. Themes or tropes in storytelling?
As in which, like,
I guess, like, which do you prefer? I guess is what the question the viewer is asking.
I guess themes. Um, I like to explore. I like. I like to repeat stuff sometimes from different angles, so you could see how different characters react to that. So I guess having a theme and then having it repeat again and again is something I definitely like doing.
All right, all right. Ooh, okay. I like this one. I like this question. If your book was adapted into a Broadway play
Oh gosh.
or a film or TV series,
Hmm.
who are the lead? You can give me the top three: main actor, main actress, and supporting, or
Oh,
director.
I've actually done casting calls as a series on Instagram. Krista would be Ortega, uh, uh, the lovely lady who played Wednesday.
Ooh, okay.
She's got uh, just I always feel like she's really good at playing a strong female lead who could also be soft and feminine at the same time. I've always felt like Tommy would probably be Justice Smith. He's got that sarcastic humor, and he's not the big buff action star that I feel like a
Okay.
lot of people would want to have as a male lead. And who else? I have a character in the second book, uh, Jihao Zeng. She always looks like Michelle Way in my head.
Okay.
Older lady, very elegant, but able to kick your ass if she wants to.
Ooh,
Yeah,
nice. Those are some good ones. In
yeah.
kind of the same realm, this person really followed suit after this. If ooh, okay, this is a really good fan question. Whoever sent this fan question to me, thank you. This is a really good one. If each character had a theme song, what theme song would that character have? Let's go with the first three that you mentioned previously.
Krista is a violin player, and her favorite song is Dance Macabre. Uh, Tommy is also a violin character, but he also plays piano. And so he usually jazz. Um, and the big bads would probably be in the Hall of the Mountain King. Dun, 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 dun.
Okay.
Like,
Nice.
yeah, I think that would work for them. Yeah,
Awesome. Again, whoever sent in that fan question, thank you.
yeah,
That was a really
that's a
good
good
one.
question. Yeah.
And we're almost near the end. I got a few last fan questions I want to get to before I get to the final set of questions. And let's see. Man, you guys did not hesitate. You guys sent in a lot. Okay, I'm gonna pick which one have I not done. Okay, here we go. Here's another fan question. Was there ever a character in the initial draft phase that did not make it to the final book phase?
Um. Hmm. Um. Sorry, I'm thinking because this was 5 years ago. Um. No, I don't think there was a character that didn't make it into the final book. I think most characters that I developed actually made it into it. There came a certain point where I realized that what I thought was going to be one book was going to probably have to be turned into two books. And then
Right.
I sat, the story kept developing for me. And so it turned from, oh, this is going to have to be turned into two books, and no, maybe three, maybe four. Like I said, I'm very much a pantser. So it wasn't so much a character that didn't make it to the book. It was just shifting what would make for a good first book, and then realizing, oh gosh darn it, this is going to be a series. This is not going to be a standalone. This is going to be a series. So there was a certain point that I had to stop the first book and tie it up and make sure that it was all done. And like, okay, everything that you just developed for the first book, we're just going to shift it over to the next one. I think I had that conversation in my head, like, well, okay, yep, let's keep going. So yeah,
Absolutely.
not a character, but definitely plot points and ideas for the plot and the next book, and realizing that at some point I just got to move on to the next one in the series.
Absolutely. And before we get to the final questions, there was one other important question that I did want to ask you, and that's, of course, networking as an indie author. Networking, I have learned to be very, very vital and essential for authors. And I've learned a lot from the people I have networked over the years. For you, Michelle, in your opinion, which is this is the two-part question, do you believe that all authors, regardless if they're trad, hybrid, or traditional, should be open to networking? And are there any people that you would like to give a personal shout out to who have helped you on your journey?
Um, I think it's very important to make sure you do things like what we're doing here, agreeing to do interviews, agreeing to there have been making sure people get free copies of the book. You know,
Mhm.
if they're willing to do a review. Unfortunately, sometimes you give a copy and then you never hear from them again.
Right.
Um, I think it's less about connecting with authors and trying to connect with the people who will help you connect to readers.
Right.
And so, for example, one of the biggest supporters that I've had is somebody named Casey for Double the Books magazine on Instagram.
Mm.
And she has done reviews for my book. She has featured her book, but she's featured my books in her magazine. Um, so it's less about other authors, although obviously an author saying, hey, if you like this, try this, is very important. I think it's more finding the people who can help you connect to readers.
Right.
Yeah. So she's definitely been a big supporter and a big cheerleader. And I know that once I get the third book done, I can reach out to her and be like, hey, do you want to read the next in the series? And she'll probably see, God, yes, give it to me. And I think and you just have to find your person, unfortunately, and see if you can find somebody like that.
Awesome, Michelle. Awesome. And now we've reached the final question of this amazing interview. At the end of the day, we talked about a lot of great things in this interview, from your beginnings during the lockdown years, writing these incredible characters, finding your tribe, what you've learned over the years in terms of marketing, networking, and so forth. At the end of the day, what do you want people to take away from your series of books, as well as leave them a piece of advice, a pearl of wisdom, so to speak?
I just hope that people enjoy the books. I really truly hope that as long as you are a fantasy fan, that my books give you a little bit of joy, whether it's that scene or that character, or that funny situation, or the scene that makes you cry. Um, and yeah, if you find what you enjoy, it might not be popular, it might not be a bestseller, but own it. Take it, enjoy it. Um, you know, and make sure you let that person who wrote it know that, hey, I love your work. I love this book. Let us know. We love hearing people say, I love this scene, I love this work, I love this character. It really does make all the work worth it.
Yes, very, very true, Michelle. And a beautiful way to end this amazing author interview. With that, viewers and listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another amazing author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. A huge thank you to Michelle for coming on the show and making her official debut. Hopefully, this will not be the last time we have her on the Wandering Scribe show. Now, Michelle, before we end today, where can people find you on social media if they want to connect, as well as buy copies of your books?
I'm mostly on Instagram, those that glow gold. The books are available basically everywhere that books are sold. Anywhere from Amazon to bookshop.org, as well as your local library. So yeah, if you request the book at your local library, hopefully they can bring it to you. And yeah, just let me know what you think. Just don't leave that 1-star review for Being Fantasy, please.
Awesome. Awesome. I will link all that down below in the description of this video, viewers and listeners. Thank you so much for joining us for another amazing author interview here on the show. A huge thank you to Michelle for making her official appearance on The Wandering Scribe. And if you like this episode, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with all the new episodes coming out later this month. I have a good lineup of people for December to completely end 2025. And also be on the lookout for the release of Decimus, which will be coming out on Christmas Eve. So you still have enough time to pre-order a copy to get it for a fantasy lover in your life. Or if you're looking for a new book to add to your collection, now is the perfect time. I'll provide the link for that down below. And as always, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe again. And until next time, this has been The Wandering Scribe and The Wandering Quill signing out. Wish you all a wonderful evening wherever you are in the world. And we'll see you all in the next episode. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Take care and happy holidays.
Happy